Hi, my name is Brittany Boss.
My name is Eric Blaska.
Hi, I'm Dr. Melora Erickson Tomeno.
My name is Dr. Edward Miguel.
I am a parent of an individual that has special needs. My son Hunter is autistic, and his twin sister Hannah is not. I have started a nonprofit for autism that creates awareness through art, music, and kindness.
I'm a firefighter paramedic with the City of Huntington Beach Fire Department. I'm lucky enough to have a family member with autism, and ultimately I feel like I need to be an advocate and to teach those around me and to better serve our community.
I am the principal of Portview Preparatory School. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst.
Founder and principal of Portview Preparatory. We are a non-public school that educates students with severe autism spectrum disorders and related developmental disabilities. It's really important to us to work collaboratively with the first responders in our community so that we can serve this unique and extremely important population in the most effective manner.
So we're coming together to bring awareness and education to our first responders, policemen, firemen, and anyone in the community.
Our hope is to really collaborate with our first responders and understand their needs in the field, and also provide some training and insight into how to identify individuals with special needs and how to best approach them so that we can serve our entire community to the best of our ability.
So regarding training about special needs and specifically children with autism, we weren't really ever given a ton of formal education in that topic. Ultimately, those patients are patients that need to be loved and treated like everyone else. So it behooves medical professionals, firefighter paramedics, and paramedics and EMTs to understand who our patients are and who we're ultimately going to deal with.
We want to discuss what is autism spectrum disorder, what are the challenging behaviors that are commonly observed, understanding what those behaviors look like, how we can keep everyone safe, and how we can continue to collaborate to ensure a safe and healthy community.
So what is autism? Autism is a developmental disability where the individual presents with persistent deficits in social, communication, and behavioral skills, relationship reciprocity, social emotional functioning, and understanding other individuals.
And is oftentimes accompanied by aggressive behaviors or what appears as aggressive behaviors. And many of these individuals have limited to no verbal abilities. So who does this affect? We know from the CDC that 1 in 54 children are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. This diagnosis affects all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups equally. However, autism spectrum disorder is 4 times more common in males than females. It's really important to understand why the individual that you're encountering on a call is engaging in the behavior that they may be. Typically, with individuals with autism, there are 4 reasons or 4 functions that they may demonstrate challenging behaviors. These 4 functions are escape. They want to get away from something that is uncomfortable or scary to them. Number 2, attention. They're trying to get somebody's attention. 3, access. They're trying to gain access to something that they need or want. Or lastly, automatic. They're simply engaging in the behavior because it's reinforcing or feels good to do so.
It's really important that first responders have some understanding of what this actually looks like.
And part of that understanding is knowing what some of the common behaviors or common behavioral presentations of individuals with autism.
Some behaviors you may see are what we call elopement. This is where an individual would flee or quickly run away from an environment or an area where they are really trying to get away from a situation that feels uncomfortable to them. They aren't trying to avoid a police officer or avoid any first responder. It's that they don't know how to process the situation and are trying to get away from something that feels very uncomfortable.
This is a very big definition that I would love to bring awareness to in the community, specifically first responders, due to an experience that I had personally. My son pushed my daughter into a bicyclist. She got hurt. I had to leave her and run after him. I shouted out, "He's a runner, he's an eloper," and in a crowd of 50 people, nobody understood what that meant. Another one to look out for is a sensory avoider. That's somebody who's sensitive to light, sound, touch, where if you were to just go to unbuckle their seatbelt after an accident, they may scream in horror, but really they're not in pain. So a sensory seeker, such as my son, he will greet you in such a way as to headbutt you or to hit you when he's really just trying to be his charming self. A person can also be nonverbal.
Not all individuals with autism spectrum disorder have verbal ability and may lack language altogether. For those individuals, they may communicate using sign language, picture icon cards, or even in some cases, an iPad or a similar device. So if they're reaching for that type of object, it's not to harm, or again, it's not to be combative, it's to communicate to the responder a need that they are having or information that they may need to provide.
Another behavior is what a meltdown or outburst can be. When they are brought on, my son specifically will drop to the floor like a ton of bricks, or he'll start to headbutt things. So being able to identify what a meltdown is and if it's happening, it may give the first responders a little bit better approach to assess the situation.
I'm clapping.
I see that. Ready, Freddy? Up. Oh, do we want to watch Snoopy? Let's go. Hopping at him. All right. Look at that big old check mark.
Other behaviors that you may experience in the field are an individual with autism being physically aggressive towards you. Again, this is different than an individual that maybe is being combative with first responders. And the individual with autism is really trying to communicate something. So in the past, they may have gotten needs met by their parents or teachers when they hit out of a need for the individual serving them to get them to stop doing what they're doing. And so they have learned that when I hit, I get what I need and I get what I want. They may also hit themselves. This is called self-injurious behavior. And again, when you block them or when you try and stop them, they may then come and aggress towards you. So it's important to understand some de-escalation techniques where you aren't necessarily needing to physically interact or handcuff or hold the child down. And we'll go through some of those as well. When being called as a first responder to an incident in the community or in someone's home, if you were made aware that one of the individuals involved has autism spectrum disorder or a developmental disability, it's important to note that the individual may appear non-compliant or combative, but in most cases, that is not the intent.
They may perceive your response differently than the general public. What I mean by that is that they have a familiarity, in many cases, with being restrained or held down. So there is a sense of anticipation. And I know as first responders, you probably deal with people that also have familiarity with that, but it's a bit different. Meaning that anticipation is a means to meet a need that they have. In this population, there are a lot of sensory issues. Internally, they process information differently than we do. That means that something like pressure or being held down might be what they're looking for. But what happens is that when they receive it, they are going to respond in a more escalated fashion to get that type of input more. So the public perception or your perception might be that they're continuing to engage in an aggressive manner because they're trying to go after you or they're trying to go after someone else. But really, it's because their needs being met.
So things like handcuffing them or restraining them may further heighten their aggression or further heighten their sensory system and cause the situation to escalate extremely quickly.
What we discovered was when we didn't come at the situation like that, when we used strategies like evasion, when we used strategies like presenting alternative means of communication, understanding why they were escalated, understanding what they were trying to access as a means of escalation, we were able to de-escalate the situation further, and we could not have physical contact with the student. This is probably a shift in what you normally do, especially in a situation where there's a risk to someone's health or safety. But with an understanding of what the individual is going through, especially paired with their diagnosis, you're more likely going to be more effective if you don't meet tension with tension. A relaxed response is always best. When an individual comes at you or is going after someone else, we want to respond and remove them from the situation in the most delicate manner possible. The reason we do that is because it's confusing. It's not predictable. These kids or adults have experience with that type of response. So you're giving them familiarity when you meet them with tension versus with a relaxed state. So when you respond with a relaxed state, that almost presses pause on the behavior. And what happens is that they take time to process that. And that tunnel vision starts to open up. And that's what you want. So rather than seeking to stop the behavior when you arrive on scene, perhaps there's an opportunity to seek to understand what the individual is trying to communicate. The person that is able to give them the means to communicate will often reduce the behavior and will give them a reason to stop it.
Do you want to talk about where we're going? Yeah? Okay, so this morning, we're going to go to the bathroom, we're going to have your medicine, then you can take a break. Miss Candace is going to do some work with you on the computer. Right, we're going to get in the car, and we're going to go bowling. Does that sound good? Yeah? Awesome. All right. Yeah, once we're sitting down, I'll call you.
The other thing is, we don't want you to be unsafe. We don't want them to harm you. And I've seen reductions in staff injuries when we come at the situation this way. I've been personally called out to homes, and one of the things that I do when I get those calls is to try to understand not only what's occurring, but what occurred prior to their reason for calling me. As I get that information and I'm on my way, I'm already developing a plan for how I'm going to come into contact with that person that I'm being called for. Once I arrive at the home, I again first meet with the person that called me and ask what happened before, what's happening now, and what needs to happen afterwards. The reason I ask for what needs to happen afterwards is because I want to make sure I'm leaving everyone feeling safe and with a plan for the behavior or the reason I'm being called to not happen again. Because what I don't want is to leave and then get called back out, which I'm sure that's something similar between both of our fields.
If there are other individuals that are familiar with this individual in the immediate setting, it will be really important to elicit information from them. They will be most familiar on strategies to use to de-escalate the student or the individual so that they do not escalate further. Things like speaking slowly to them, modeling taking deep breaths, or even just giving them extra time to process the information that you're saying are all strategies that can be used.
You can ask things like, what does this child like? How do they speak? Do you have any sensory instruments that we can use? Those are all tools in your belt. And I know that as first responders, you can't carry around a bag of tools with all of the other things that you have. But chances are, wherever you are, they might have something that you can use to your benefit.
You want blanket?
Did that?
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So, for example, I responded to a home and the student was biting his father, okay? The student had already pulled the TV off the wall, it was broken everywhere, and peed on the back of the couch. He was continuing to go after family members, and the family was fearful that the neighbors were gonna call the police. Obviously, we wanted to get the situation de-escalated as quick as possible. What I ended up doing was going in with the student and presenting the student with a variety of different options that they could have. Also, with a task that they needed to complete in order to access those options. So in this case, it was a coping skill. The student happened to have an exercise ball that I wanted the student to bounce on for 10 times before I gave them access to their preferred item. Their preferred item happened to be, and it is in most cases, an iPad. So what I did is I presented the demand of, hey, if you can bounce on the ball 10 times, I'll give you iPad for 2 minutes. The student bounced on the ball 10 times and was still escalated, would stop and attempt to swipe, and I would say, try again. Once the student successfully completed those 10 bounces, I gave them access to iPad for 2 minutes. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to insert another request for compliance before earning something else. This is something that we call behavior momentum. We give an easy task, and then we reinforce it, and then we strengthen the task or make it more difficult, and then we reinforce it again. So the next time, it was bounce on the ball 15 times, and then iPad for 2 minutes, and then 20 times, and iPad for 2 minutes. As I'm observing the student complete the thing that they don't want to do and the thing that they do want to do, I'm observing their affect, their ability to relax, and what I'm expecting to see is a change in state. Once I see the change in their state and that they're more relaxed, then I facilitate an interaction with their family member or the person that they called. What I have the family member do is present what's called a first and then contingency. Basically, they ask the child or adult, or in this case, our student, to do something, and then they tell them what they're going to do after they do that task. Once they do the task, they'll reinforce them with the then contingency, and then they will prime them for the next demand. So basically, I'm passing off the interaction that I just had with the student, and that should continue throughout the remainder of the night, because usually these things are happening in the evenings, after school, outside of the structured environment.
For parents or family members or caregivers of individuals on the spectrum, it's really important that you use the tools that you have developed to remain calm in the midst of crisis so that the first responders can intervene appropriately.
If you have a child or a family member with special needs, I think it's extremely important when you call 911 to let us know what special need your family member is dealing with, especially if they have any sensory issues, if they're afraid of loud noises. Maybe you can say, hey, my son or family member is extremely afraid of loud noises. Definitely share with those 911 dispatchers what coping mechanisms your child or family member needs to make them feel safe in their home. The more we know to arriving at the scene, the better it is to make it safer for everyone. Here at the Huntington Beach Fire Department, the better we can understand our entire demographic, and that's every resident, including those with special needs, the better we're able to serve them.
We want to thank all of the first responders for all that they do for our community, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video and working with us to get a collaborative training out to other first responders. We hope that this is really just a starting point and that we will have future opportunities to better equip you and give you more tools on how to interact with this population so that we can keep you safe as well as individuals with autism spectrum disorder.